everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences.
Get on with it.
So we're taking a look at the next light entry from Thunderworks Games, which is Tenpenny Parks. This has you building up a theme park using chunky, thick polyomino tiles on your own personal board. And what you're essentially doing is you're trying to build them in an efficient manner so that you can gain money from, souvenir stalls that surround them, but you can also gain victory points from the attractions themselves, and also level up on these free tracks here for thrill, awe and joy, which can get you various bonuses and other points potential during the game, and of course the usual shtick of gaining some points from little end of game objectives and the like. So essentially it's a straight up worker placement game. You have spaces around the carousel wheel with prices that influence the prices of the cards that are on the space next to them, but there's also a few general spaces around which are mainly more for getting little souvenir tiles on your board that can add you extra income, but also to gain you more ability to expand your park and chop trees down, which are essentially tree markers that you'll have on your board at the start of the game. Now, while you're doing this, you're leveling up on these tracks, and these can get you bonuses such like a bonus worker or first player marker or extra money at the end of a round, but potentially more points later on. The game continues for 5 rounds. You rinse and repeat the free worker spots until eventually you get to the end, and of course the one with the most points is the winner. Let's get the major positive out of the way first. Wow. Okay, Thunderworks Games is up and down when it comes to their production quality for the most part. They tend to do quite well, but there's some downers now and again. There is pretty much nothing in this game I can consider a downer from a component perspective. Whoever you have printing this in terms of the physical components, give them a raise or make sure you sign a 10-year contract with them because you need to keep using them. I have not seen cardboard this thick ever, I don't think. This is the thickest cardboard I have seen. It is good quality. It punches out without any rips or tears. It's just glorious. Every tile, I feel that if I smacked you with this tile, I would bludgeon you to death. It's that thick. Everything from the victory point tokens to the tiles themselves. Your board is a massive chunky thing. Even the money. The money's, I was afraid it was going to be like paper money or something, and it's basically cardboard dollar bills, but man, these are the best cardboard dollar bills ever. Seriously, you want to make money, like literal money, just make yourself a little box of this type of money, right? 1s, 3s, 5s, 10s, and 20s, or something like that, right? Just a big money box, and sell it as an accessory. Trust me, I'd buy one, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people would as well, if it meant getting stuff like this, because this is just glorious. Absolutely glorious. Add to that, you've then got Vincent Dutrait's artwork all over this, which just completely helps to bring out the theme. The rulebook and the cover itself is already nice and colourful. The board doesn't take up a lot of table space, which is nice. It is not a table hog by any means, even when you've got your little boards nearby. But then you've got this 3D carousel that you construct, which thanks to the thick cardboard is simplicity itself assembling it. But then you've also got the tiles themselves that are covered in Vincent Dutrait's artwork. The rules as well, dead simple. I mean, this rulebook is not particularly big. 5 pages, 5.5 tops for giving you the rules, and there's lots of pictorial representations, including a full setup diagram, and you've even got reference cards as well to sort of act as a memory jogger. It doesn't explain all the rules on here, but it explains basically enough to kind of get you go, oh yeah, I remember, it's that, isn't it? But you do have to remember some aspects like how the tiles go together, which again is pretty straightforward, although you do have to get into this mindset that in this game, unlike a lot of polyominoes, the edges of the tiles cannot touch adjacent. They have to be touching at corners or not touch each other at all, basically. That is very different and slightly unintuitive from a lot of other polyomino games. It makes sense in the course of this. You probably would space your rides out in a theme park, but when we're so used to trying to fill up boards like Patchwork and BarenThemePark and Alice's Garden as efficiently and neatly as possible, no empty spaces, here you're going to have empty spaces. Deal with it. That's why you've got to expand your park several times during the game. Even the solo rules, 1 page on the back of the book, and when all's said and done, the AI is basically just another player that doesn't do much, really. It gets points by a very simplified manner. It doesn't require half the components that are in the game. It just basically has a fixed sequence of how it assigns its free workers, gets the cards, gets the points, and that's about it. It doesn't deal with money or anything else. And there's a couple of difficulty levels if you want to make it slightly harder, although to be honest, I think the basic difficulty is enough of a challenge. It's beatable, but it's also potentially losable as well, so that's a good difficulty out of the box. If you want to make it hard mode, then you have the option. But yeah, I played the solo mode straight from the box. I literally like looked at the solo rules, set it up in that way, and then read the gameplay rules, and then played it from scratch, and I was done within an hour. It really was that quick and that easy. Now the box claims 45 to 75 minutes, and that's actually a pretty accurate time of how long this should take. Player scaling is a little bit off though. The idea with this is that it's 2 to 4 players and nothing really scales. No extra spaces come out or anything, and nothing changes on the tracks or your board. 2 to 4 players is identical, which means that in a 2-player game, there's not a lot of contention for these spots because there's only 2 of you gaining the spaces. Whereas with 4 of you, it becomes incredibly tight. And this leads on to a bit of an issue where money is so important in this game. It is like the bread and butter of everything you can do. And there's only so many ways to boost your income. You've got a couple of hot dog stands and the souvenir tile and some other ones that give slightly less. And there's some basic sort of like chip shop cards that are in the mix here. So not just attractions, but money generators. And with 4 of you, you find that you may not necessarily have the opportunity by the time it comes back round to you to get the thing you need. And if you're left on the back foot after the first, say, 1 or 2 rounds tops, and you haven't got a decent money generator going, your chances of winning are very, very slim. Anybody who gets a decent jump on their income early is in with a very high chance of winning, if not a full chance of winning. So there is a little bit of a runaway leader issue with more players. With 2 players, generally both players can get a half decent income engine going. 3 is probably the sweet spot because you want a little bit of tension in there, but you don't want someone to be completely hosed just because 2 players took things that they would like. There should at least be about a third option, but 4... It's not the game's bad with 4, but you have to accept that it's a lot tenser, a lot tighter, and maybe it's going to rub some people the wrong way. The gameplay in general is fun, but it's not something that really blows my mind. Most of the things you're getting points for are the attraction tiles that you build during the game, so the cards you collect, and what you can get from these score tracks. So these score tracks, the Thrill, Awe and Joy, which are basically just 3 generic tracks, it doesn't really matter too much. You level up and you can get a bonus at the end of the round, and if you get to the far end you score some points. That's essentially what these are. It's just basically a tug of war with the other players because you have to move back along the track in order to take the bonus. So do you want to take the bonus or do you want to leave it and just go a little bit further? You know, that's a half decent decision, but at the end of the day it's just 3 generic tracks. Putting polyominoes on your board is nothing new. We've seen it before a million times, but the fact that you've got to clear trees from here as well as place the tiles in such a way that they only at most touch diagonally is a bit of a different puzzle than you're used to, and certainly does require a decent amount of spatial awareness to do this, so that's fine as well. The worker placement bit is fairly standard. The ability to move this carousel, spin it round and adjust the prices, is good, which is why being first player is important in this game. Leaving yourself in last place could really make everything expensive for you, and that's not a good thing. If you're not doing well on the money engine, you must make your stuff cheaper, otherwise you're basically screwed. But it's not anything particularly new, and that's the one sort of disadvantage of this game, is that nothing in here is particularly innovative. We've seen this stuff before. We've seen adjustable prices. We've seen the theme park done. Here it certainly is brought out a bit more because of its aesthetics. And we've seen this whole thing with expanding your board. This is basically BarenThemePark. One board, and then you expand it a little bit. It's BarenThemePark through and through. Make money, buy cards, make a bit more money, buy more cards. The game arc here is smooth, and it's not particularly clunky, but it's not particularly epic or not particularly... I'm trying to think of the right word, but you don't feel that you're doing a huge amount in this game. And by the time you get to like round 5 and the game's about to end, you don't feel like you've achieved a great deal by then. You've got a few rides. You get bonus points for getting 6 rides. Only 6? That's not a lot of rides before you start getting bonus points. So sometimes you feel like your engine has just started and then the game's about to end. Not a big deal, but you just got to accept that 5 rounds is not a lot of rounds to get your stuff done. Replayability is also lacking here. There's not a lot of variation. You use all the theme park cards. They're just shuffled in a slightly different order and they come up at different rates. But the only main thing is that they've just got slightly different prices, slightly different victory points, and level you up on certain tracks differently. But that's it. It's not like the moon launch is fundamentally different from Ad Astra. They're just 2 different rides with 2 different pictures. That's pretty much it. And then you've got these goals that you select at the start of the game, and they're very generic. There's only, I think, 3 or 4 different versions of these goals, and they're not that exciting. I mean, end the game with at least 3 prehistoric attractions. There'll be one for the green attractions and the yellow attractions, and one for the Old West attractions. I forget what the colours represent, but basically there'll be one of these for all the different types, okay? And then there'll be one for getting up on these tracks. Alright, there's one for each of the free tracks, and then there'll be one for having, you know, a bunch of money or something, and there'll be several versions of that. The goals aren't that interesting, and at the end of the day, they only get you about 3 points each, which is not a lot of points, really, when you consider what you're getting for the rides. Most people will gain one, if not both, of their goals. It's very unlikely you're not going to get any of them. So they just seem really ineffectual, and you know, it's almost to the point where if you took these out, you would lose pretty much nothing in the game, so there's not much there. So Tenpenny Parks has got a lot going for it in terms of its visual aesthetics and its artwork and everything. I mean, this is probably the most beautiful game that Thunderworks Games has ever put out. If there's one more beautiful than this, please tell me, because I just love to look at it all day. This has got some of the best component quality and some of the best artwork I've seen in the game this year, or for the last year and a half practically. It's just that gorgeous. But the gameplay is fine, but maybe just a little generic. Maybe a little bit sort of lacking in oomph. You know, that game arc is not quite there. The replay value is not quite there. And it's mainly going to be a sort of a 2 free player experience, 4 if you want a tight game. I mean, it works at 4. It depends what kind of player you are. And there is a solo mode for, you know, the times where you can't get the family together and you just want a quick 60-minute game. You know, it is a pretty quick affair in that regard. But yeah, you're leveling up a few tracks, you get a few cards, and you build a few tiles on your board. It is still very basic. And we've seen this type of thing before. There's nothing here that I would consider to be particularly innovative. You know, nothing is changing the formula. It's the same formula, just done with better component quality and better artwork. So it makes it a good game. Just not a great one. Just not one that I would sing the praises of. I'm giving it overall a 7 out of 10. It's good. It deserves a seal of endorsement, because I think for this kind of quality that you are getting in terms of, you know, the artwork and the components, with a game that is still fun. It's not like it's terrible or anything like that. It's kind of on par with something like BarenThemePark. You know, you play BarenThemePark a few times, you've seen most of what's on offer, but it's still a fun polyomino game. The same is kind of the same here. It's a fun polyomino game with a little bit of additional stuff with the cards and the tracks, but at the end of the day, you've seen it before. It's just you probably have the nicest looking polyomino game, short of one that's all about farming and plants, maybe. But yeah, it's gorgeous. You know, it really is. And I honestly, if I could just give it a mark for that, it'd be a 10 out of 10. But overall, it's good. Just not anything to write home about, but it deserves a 7 out of 10. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. I'm Luke Hector, and if you like what you see, please thumb it up on YouTube, but also thumb it up on Board Game Geek when the review goes live, because it'd be great to get it into the hot reviews. If you've got any comments about the game, then leave them down below, and I'll be sure to read them and try to respond when I can. But also, if you want to check out more content on the channel, then by all means check out the top 10 2-player advanced games list that I have just done to wrap up my trilogy of the 2-player games. By all means, check out all 3 if you can. Take care, and remember, as always, regardless of what kind of park you want to build, it's still only a game. Bye for now.